Hey YouTube, this is Jeremiah again. Welcome back. If you're new here, welcome. Welcome to Fordland. So here's an update on this engine for the timing. Let me show y'all, make sure everything's right. So look at here, I got the tool here. I got the pin here. And I got the crank there as well. But remember, due to this still is a floating motor, floating crank, you can still turn it. So make sure it's on top dead center. This will free spin at all times. So I had a customer come in with no brake pedal, none. There's a vacuum pump that sits back here that sticks into the shaft. And we diagnosed it, and he said, well, I could do it cheaper. So he went home, replaced it, and the car still ran like shit with no brakes. So he brought it back to us. I scanned it, checked for codes, no codes. It just wouldn't run. It was running rough, so I had to have somebody else inside the car while I listened to the engine. We fired over. It's like, this thing's out of time. But I had no timing codes, cam codes, nothing. So I'm like, all right. So I gave the customer two options. There's so many ways of doing this. I said I could tear it down, retime the engine, or see. He says, well, what's the cheaper version? I said, well, I can pull the front cover off, put it at top dead center, and make sure the front's right. He says, okay. So he did that. I did that. Right. So I lined these up, pulled the front cover off. The crank was still on. Everything was top dead center. Top dead center here, here, and here. Everything was lined. Okay. I put everything back together. Try to crank it back over. Same thing. I'm like, man, this thing is out of time somewhere. He says, so I called my master tech. He listened to it. He says, no, there's something else wrong. Do this test, and this test, etc., etc. So I did all these tests, wasted like 2.5 hours. So I was like, you know what? I know there's 3 parts to this engine at a time. If something's out of time, if you think something's wrong, there's 3 parts. So, told the customer I need it overnight. I need it for a whole day. So he left it overnight, and the next day, I tore everything off, everything back off, got it all the way down to here. No caps. Well, when I retimed the front engine, I looked at it, retimed it, everything's right in time. This camshaft was 7 degrees off. It was turned. This tool would not line up with, this was fine. Well, this one, instead of going straight this way, it was straight slit because there's a slit in there. See how there's a slit right in here? Instead of being this way, it was up and down. I'm like, well, there's your problem right there. When the vacuum pump took a shit and gave up because it was frozen, it turned the crank so many certain degrees. But it wouldn't throw any codes, wouldn't throw nothing. So I retimed the back, I retimed the front, then I retimed the crank. Put everything back together, and guess what? It ran just fine. Nothing was bent, nothing was messed up. Like I said, these engines right here give you a certain percentage of degrees without bending anything. Anything over 20% of degrees will not hit. It'll run like crap or won't run at all. But this crank is a floating crank until the crank is on. Then everything is back in time. So that's my story. That's my update for the day. Yeah. I got everything top dead center. I got to pull the pin. All right. So everything's in time. But still, that crank will spin. Watch. It will spin still. Because it's a free spinning crank. So don't forget. Everything's right there. So I won't pull any tools out until I put the crank on. Put the crank on, set it, and I do the torque spec. There's supposed to be a tool that sits right there that we do not have. But I usually go around it and do everything right here. Always forget, remove that pin. If you leave that pin in there and start the engine, mayhem's gonna happen. So don't forget to like, share, subscribe, comment if you need to, and y'all have a great day.